Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday, April the 5th call. Passing between messages here. So maybe that might mean that we're going to do both. But I did, set out with the intention of, we've been talking about, branding and marketing and really some business foundations, tapping into some mindset pieces that go with business foundations. And so I think I'm going to just start with that. A lot of times in our quest, right, to find clients, we will follow a path or a system from someone who's had success in that way, and their methodologies, and we talk lots about this, right, might not resonate with you. And so but I guess what I want to acknowledge is other there other methodologies that might resonate with you, and sharing some of what I've learned over the years, and ciphering, I guess, sharing with you what I've learned and didn't like the methodology I didn't like, but then maybe adding a few pieces to it, because I think it's important that we do have direction, right? I think it's important that we create our own direction. And as I was even sharing with you that, we can use a methodology to find clients, to attract clients. What if we took the premise of that, like money, people were searching for you? So we don't have to go and find money or find clients or find opportunities. We just need to raise our hand and say, I'm open for business, right? And last week I shared the story about the woman in Camrose who just opened her doors for business, but no one really knew she was in business. She had an open sign but didn't have a sign, right? So she had like a little open sign in the window but didn't have any signage. And so is that kind of taking those opportunities of metaphorical lessons and go, do people know I'm open for business? And how do I let people know? How do you let people know that you're open for business? And what is your business? And so if you're selling a product, is that product your business, or are you your business and the product is a vehicle for you? Is it one product, two products, three products? It's the same with services. As a coach or consultant, is that our business model, or are we the business? And how do you feel about being the business? Because that could be a disconnect for you. If you're not comfortable being the business, and then you're not comfortable doing business, it kind of makes sense that the universe would be hesitant to send you clients, because your hand isn't up saying, right, I'm comfortable being in business. I'm comfortable, doing what I'm doing. I'm comfortable. And comfortable is just a word. Insert whatever word resonates with you. I was thinking about most of the marketing messages out there, right, is to talk about your ideal client. Like, you always start with your target audience and your ideal client. And I think one of the greatest ways of explanation came from one of my mentors. And he asked me a question one day, which was, so the question is, what experiences do you share with your ideal client, either past or present, right? So what experiences do you share or have shared, I guess that's another way to ask it, with your client? And it doesn't have to be anything. It could be nothing, right? It could be, right? But there might be some of those things. And then most often, coaches or consultants, business will say, ask yourself what, when I started this conversation last week with this, what problem do you solve? So I use the analogy of, people don't buy a drill or a hammer, right? They buy a hole in the wall. There's a problem, and then they look for the solution. So the solution is, right? I need a hole in the wall, or I need this drill to do something. What's the to do something? But even deeper than that, and really to get to know your client, which I think you do, but you may not know how well you know your ideal client, which is what are their fears, right? What are their frustrations? And what are their challenges? And this is great because don't get caught up in the, is this a fear or a frustration? Just write it down. Just, and then you can move things around, right? And there might be crossover, right? A frustration also might be a challenge, right? When I first did the sales and marketing, I was like, people were frustrated with technology, and technology was a challenge, right? And I could relate to that. Right? And so what are their fears? What are their frustrations? And what are their challenges? Right? And so because you get to intimately know, right, your ideal client. And there is a possibility that you, either in the past you or your present you, is your ideal client. Right? And then I want you to ask yourself, so what are their fears, what are their frustrations, and what are their challenges? And they have what's referred to as a false problem. So they think their problem is something, but it's a false problem. Right? So what is their false problem? So an example in my world, there's a couple, would be the false problem would be time management maybe, or not connecting to oh no, let me reword that. So false problem in my world would be time management or challenges with marketing or sales. A false problem in my world could be looking for a different marketing strategy, right? Following someone and something's not working, like something's amiss. That's a challenge, but it's also a false problem. And then I want you to think about what's the real problem. So there's a false problem. And then what's the real problem? And then ask yourself, there's also a false solution. So they're looking for the false solution with their false problem. What's their real problem and the real solution? Because I think truly the secret sauce, which unfortunately is a secret to a lot of people up until now, use that terminology, I love that word, is that people are seeking out the false solution. So when you're out speaking to your audience, you actually want to address their false problem and their false solution, but you also want to address the real problem and the real solution. So in your quote unquote marketing materials, so if we were going to do a different kind of elevator pitch, if that's something that you feel drawn to eventually, it would be talking about that, right? And I won't fill in the blanks, but it kind of goes like, so what do you do, Ranshaw? Well, I help women or I help women, for mine would be women, and da 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 da, right? And I would talk about their fears, a frustration, a challenge. And they think the problem is, and I would list the false problem. And they're looking for this, which is the false solution. And I'll give you the formula again. But the real problem is, and then I would list the real problem. And so we'll go through that. I'll give you the actual formula this week. But for now, spend some time in the, what is like, so they think this is the problem and what's the solution, or the false problem, false solution. What's the real problem? What's the real solution? Right? And so it can be, something simple and or complex, right? So Jen, you and I've had this conversation quite often about, right, and not necessarily around the false problem, but they think the false solution is this magic pill, right? Everyone's looking for fast magic pill, right? And so even we could go, the thought might be the false problem is they need to eat differently, or the false problem is they're overweight simply from overeating, which that there's a part of that, right? And the false solution is, well, you're just going to change your habits. But the real problem is, right? The real problem is they're not creating new habits. So some of them might not be able to create new habits. Like if they have ADHD, creating a new habit's not the same with someone who doesn't have ADHD or a neurodivergent brain, right? So they think this is the problem, right? They may think that they just can't get it, like that the false problem could be menopause, right? That could be a false problem. So there'll be a whole bunch of false problems, right? But the solution, I think, is dieting for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, right? But the real solution, is changing lifestyle. But even that is could be a false problem as well, right? Because if you think about who really changes their habits for a lifetime, right? It's actually quite rare, like 0.01% or something, or 1% of people actually change their lifestyles for the rest of their life. So that's how you know it's a false problem and false solution, right? So, and then that could lead you to what's broken in the industry that we're in, right? What's broken with the systems that people are following, and and then you can kind of write that down, and then the next one is, and here's what I believe, right? And you may not have any evidence. It's just deep knowing. So if you need to change the word, here's what I have a deep knowing of, right? And so, and then you would write that down. What is your deep knowing, right? Like I have a deep knowing that no one's fucked up, right? That none of us are messed up, and that we don't have to get into alignment with anything. We are already in alignment with what we're meant to be in alignment with, right? I have a deep knowing that there is a very dark shadow side of marketing and sales, and there's a light side as well. But I have this deep awareness, this deep knowing, and I have a deep awareness that all of our institutions are currently built around the masculine energy. Some would say around the patriarchal energy. And I have a deep knowing that the way that the world is right now, that we're all following a patriarchal system, right? A masculine, divine masculine, or masculine, shadow masculine systems, and it doesn't feel good. And so then, we feel lost. And part of this is because, more businesses that are being opened in North America, at least, are being opened by women. So we don't resonate with the patriarchal energy of sales and marketing. And the people who keep on telling you to do it this way, like there's only one way, they certainly have had success. And they're not all men, but they're mostly men. And so then we're following nothing wrong. They're great leaders, right? But they're set in, this is the only way. And so I have a deep knowing that there's not just one way. So what is your deep knowing, right? What is your deep knowing about your industry, about the people that you want to serve? What's the number one? So we talk about fears and frustrations and challenges, right? And be kind of like, so Kim, this just came to me for you, is that, there are so many people who they have this deep desire to get a message out there, to write a book or have a podcast or whatever that looks like, but they don't know how, and they don't have the confidence to write, right? Like I didn't do well in English in high school. My ideas and concepts were great, but my writing style, I write like I talk, and always have, right? So I didn't do well in that part of English. I love reading, I love learning, love reading, and so a lack of self-confidence, a lack of self-esteem at different times doesn't mean that, I can be self-confident in so many areas of my life, and then and people have told me since I was 17, I should write a book. And I'm like, nah, right? Like, how does one even go about doing that? Right. Blogs should be written, right? Why would you write a blog, everyone? So that you can put that on your website, so that you can increase your search engine optimization. It is actually one of the quickest ways. I mean, the thing is, you don't just put a blog up, though. It has to be keywords, and there's technology behind it. But that's one of the quickest ways, right? You don't want to have people share in the glory and bask in the glory of your expertise articles on LinkedIn. So that there's all of these different ways and means of connecting with your ideal client. So Kim, back to with the fears and frustrations, right? The fear is, I don't want to look like a fool. The frustration is, I write like I talk. Not knowing editors, you didn't know until, I think actually just before I met you, Kim, that there was actually people who could write your book for you based on an interview, based on asking questions. That could actually take your thoughts and write your book for you, which is sexy as fuck as far as I'm concerned, right? And that a book, doesn't have to be a bestseller, and there's a whole bunch of different ways to publish a book, not just one way of pitching your book to different publishers, like Hay House as an example, right? So those are all the challenges, right? How do I get my book to Hay House? Well, there's what if you didn't start with that? What if you didn't start trying to get to a Hay House? What if you just started with a book and then wrote the book, and then beyond that, though, the next part of that is leads to my next component that I want to share with you, is the lifetime value of the client, and how can you increase that? So what do I mean by that? So I'll use Kim as an example. So Kim helps someone become an author, and her connections to the publishing world now. So the book gets published, and then what does the author do with the book? And so 98%, so Kim, this would be one of the kind of in your feather in your cap, 98% of the authors don't know what to do with the book. So the book sits on their shelf behind them to promote that they wrote a book, and they use it to like, oh, I wrote a book. And I say this because all PR people say, put a shelf and put all your books up that you wrote behind you, right? But they don't know how to actually promote their book. They don't know how to do a marketing campaign. They don't know how to monetize the book, right? And so one way that you can increase the lifetime value of a client, in Kim's case, would be if she, and she doesn't even have to do this, but she could have relationships, right? Business collaborations with people who are really great at public relations, really great at marketing, really great at sales, and have the back of her client, her back of her client and say, okay, now this is great, because now they're going to have new fears, new frustrations, and new challenges. And she could be the connector, right, of the people, right? So Jen, yours would be, that's great. They've developed new lifestyle that now they don't have clothes that fit. Can you create a relationship with all the clothing, like whether it could be at clothing stores in Sylvan or clothing stores in Red Deer, like Cheeky Coutures, or even like is it Zaya? Danielle, who comes to the calls, she hasn't been here for a while, right? Or other home-based clothing companies, right? And create a joint venture relationship, right? And say, I've got your back, right? Now you have clothes that don't fit. And so do you create a clothing drive? Like there's, just think about all of the, after the fact, after you've worked with somebody, what's their fears, their frustrations and challenges? How can you increase the longevity of working with them, right? What would that look like? Right? And that way then you have long-term relationship with your clients. Right? So what does that look like? And then you would go through that whole methodology. What's their fears? What's their frustrations? What's their challenges? What's the solution? Right? What's the problem solution? False problem, false solution. And you can keep on doing that over and over and over again, because truthfully, every time you solve a problem and you have a solution, more than likely a new problem arises. So what could that look like for you in your business long term, right? And so it's great questions for contemplation, right? And you don't have to create everything right away, right? Like it's just, it could be a 2 or 3 year process, surely, right? Because if you think about your business from a sustainable perspective, right, and you're looking for long-term stability and long-term sustainability, what would that look like, right? Often people ask me about the downfall or demise of Curves, and that was it. The downfall and demise of Curves was, it was a 30-minute fitness and weight loss center. It was designed for women who were more than 30 pounds overweight, who didn't feel comfortable or confident going into a gym, who weren't looking to bulk up but wanted to be firm and toned. They wanted to do that, right? And then they had a weight loss solution, which was long-term, a long-term methodology of eating. And the first demise was when someone starts feeling comfortable and confident, and because it was a circuit, then people, although they knew that it worked, they got bored. They wanted something different, and we didn't have anything different to offer. And Gary Haven, the founder of Curves, thought, well, people will just stay because it works. But people get bored, right? Women would get bored. And so that was one demise. If people left, right, and they would want to come back, then the policy that we had at Curves is they'd have to pay that service fee again. Once you left, you had to come back and pay the service fee. And women felt that that was unfair, right? So he eventually, I think he addressed that one, but right, so that there was that. But the other thing that happened was when people left Curves, although they knew it worked, it was boring for them. They left because it was boring, not because it didn't work. So they were hesitant to come back, even though it worked, because it was boring, and then they wouldn't come, right? So that was one of the demises. And the second demise was getting caught in a lot of weight loss rhetoric, right? What an incredible program. It was actually proven to work. The methodology worked through Baylor University. There was a 5-year study that was done. A huge feather in his cap. But something happened at head office, which I don't know. But certainly that demise, there wasn't an ability for longevity. And so then that was one demise. And then the second one was not really understanding the problem. right? Meaning advertising to the false problem, which is what you want to do, but not really thinking about the real problem was, which is mindset, right? And the things that need to go behind creating a new neural networks. Right? So lots for you to ponder, right? From a marketing perspective. And just this opportunity of what the longevity of your business could be, right? And what does that look like, right? And so if you have one product or service, you just will open it up to like, what else could that be, right? Like what else could come into your fold, and not today, but like kind of, long term, because what is your business, and going from that perspective. And so again, I'll when I was with People's Way, which was a company that I was part of a long time ago, it was a direct sales company, like a multi-level marketing company. They wanted People's Way wanted their representatives to represent the company People's Way. And I said to Matt, who is still a very good friend of mine, that is the wrong way to do business. So this was in 2006. So in 2006, I knew that that's the wrong way to do a multi-level marketing company. And so my personal belief is what's broken in the MLM company is that the company wants you to be representative of their company. And so what you're doing is and there's nothing wrong with this, but then it's wrapping your head around, you are a direct salesperson for this company. And so there's a disconnect thinking that it's your company, because it's not, because you don't have any control over production. You don't have any control over distribution. You don't have any control over their marketing materials, right? You don't have to use their marketing materials, but you might not be able to have your own marketing materials depending on the company, right? So I've always suggested you have your company. What is your company? And what does your company represent? And use multi-level marketing, use their product as the vehicle to your company, right? So that you can have the freedom and the liberation that you want. And so that can be the same with anyone, right? If you're working under a banner of something, right? Or working for somebody, what does your company, right? So it's a different way of looking at things. Let me see if I can say this in English. If you're the CEO of your company and you work under an umbrella of another company, how will you show up differently? Like what would shift within you, right? Because you're representing your company under another company. And that can be if you work for somebody, right? Or if you are representing like an MLM, right? So you're a company rep, basically. But your company is the company rep, not you. So what does your company stand for, basically? And this slight shift, will allow you to do the thing. Now, in direct sales companies, sometimes they only allow you to do like represent one brand, right? So then there might be some things that need to change. You wouldn't be able to carry another brand, but what else could you add to your services? And Jen, you're doing that, right? What else can you add to your services? What does that look like, right? And representing your own company, because we don't have control, right? When I left People's Way, I left People's Way, was doing phenomenally well in the company, but I wasn't willing to stand on stage in front of thousands of women, mostly women, and say, you need to you're representing People's Way, so you talk about People's Way, and I was like, no, they have a company. They need to build their company, and People's Way is just one of the products. And Matt was like, no, if they're doing people's way, they can't do anything else. I'm like, well, that's crazy. I have a storefront business, but that was okay. I was like, yeah, that too is a disconnect, right? And so I ended up leaving the company. So let's tie this all together. You're wanting to answer those questions, right? What do you share? What do you have in common with your ideal client now or before? What are the fears, frustrations, challenges? What's the false problem, false solution? What's the real problem? What's the real solution? And then the last question was, what's the longevity? Once you solve the problem, and right, you come up with a solution, a new problem will arise. And how can you bring that new solution into your company, or how can you connect with somebody and create? So then you start building relationships with people who could help them solve the problem, and then you create a joint venture opportunity for your clients. And what does that look like? And you might be limited, like Tracy, in the world of where in your world you might not be able to do that because of the commission and stuff like that. But what else? What else is possible, right? And it might just be recommendations to maybe healthcare, like who are who knows? Who knows what will come out of this? All right. That's all I have to say today. Thank you so much. Have a great day and be well. Mwah. Big hugs and kisses to all of you.